What if I told you that the person you pity the most might be living a truth you're too afraid to face? Pause. Every day we walk past them. We look away. We judge. But what we don't realize is that beggars aren't just people on the street. They're mirrors reflecting something we desperately try to hide. Before we dive into this story that'll completely shift your perspective, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that like button if you're ready to question everything you thought you knew about success, dignity, and what it really means to be free. Trust me, you'll want to remember where you heard this. Now, let's begin. It was a Tuesday morning when I met him. Nothing special about the day. Just another rushed commute, another coffee in hand, another mind filled with deadlines, bills, and that constant anxiety about whether I was doing enough with my life. And there he was, sitting at the corner of 5th and Main, the same spot he'd occupied for months. Torn jacket, weathered hands, a small cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps." God bless. We've all seen someone like him, haven't we? And we've all had that same thought process. That split second where we decide whether to acknowledge them or pretend they don't exist. That uncomfortable moment where we wonder, are they genuine? What will they do with the money? Should I give? Should I walk past? Here's what we don't admit out loud. When we see a beggar, we're not just looking at someone asking for help. We're looking at our deepest fear. The fear of losing everything. The fear of becoming irrelevant. The fear of being the person everyone else walks past. But that Tuesday, something was different. Maybe I was tired of my own thoughts. Maybe I was tired of pretending I didn't see him. So I stopped. I didn't give him money. I asked him a question. "What's your story?" He looked up at me with eyes that had seen more than mine ever would, and he smiled. Not a desperate smile. Not a grateful smile. A knowing smile? My story? He said, "My story is probably not that different from yours." That's when he told me something that's haunted me ever since. "Everyone's a beggar," he said. "The only difference is what we're begging for." Let that sink in for a moment. You see, we love to create categories. We love to separate us from them, the successful from the struggling, the worthy from the unworthy. But what if that separation is just an illusion we tell ourselves to feel better? Think about it. Really think about it. The entrepreneur begging investors for funding, selling their dream to anyone who'll listen. The employee begging their boss for recognition, for a raise, for validation that they matter. The artist begging the world to see them, to appreciate their work, to confirm they're not wasting their life. The influencer begging for likes, for follows, for proof that they're relevant. What makes any of that different from the person on the street corner holding a sign? We're all asking for something we don't have. We're all hoping someone will see us as worthy. We're all terrified of being invisible. The man continued, "I used to be like you know. Had the job, had the apartment, had the routine. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. I was respectable. People smiled at me in the hallway, invited me to birthday parties, thought I had my life together. What happened? I asked. I woke up," he said simply. "I realized I was begging for a different kind of coin. I was begging my boss to notice my efforts, begging my landlord to not raise my rent, begging the bank to approve my loan, begging society to confirm that my existence had meaning. I was a beggar in a suit." This hit differently because it was true. Painfully true. How many times have you checked your phone hoping for validation? How many times have you worked late, not because you wanted to, but because you were begging for approval? How many times have you changed who you are, what you say, how you present yourself, just to beg for acceptance from people who don't even really know you? We're all performing. We're all asking. We're all begging. The difference is the costume we wear while we do it. Here's the uncomfortable truth we avoid. Most of us spend our entire lives begging for permission to exist, permission to be ourselves, permission to be happy, permission to rest, permission to dream. Yet we beg our parents for approval. We beg our teachers for validation. We beg our partners for love. We beg our children for respect. We beg strangers on the internet for likes. We beg the universe for signs that we're on the right path. And somehow, we've convinced ourselves that this is different from holding out your hand and asking for spare change. At least the beggar on the street is honest about what they need. The man shifted his position and continued. You know what the real secret is? The secret they don't want you to know? I leaned in closer. The whole system is designed to make beggars of us all. They just dress it up differently, depending on your tax bracket. He wasn't wrong. Think about the structure of our society. We're born and immediately we're dependent, begging for food, for comfort, for love. That's natural. That's human. But then we grow up and the begging just changes form. We beg the education system to prepare us for life, even though it mostly prepares us to follow instructions. We beg the job market to accept us, molding ourselves into whatever shape the job description demands. We beg the financial system for credit, for mortgages, for the privilege of living in a home we'll spend 30 years paying for. We beg the healthcare system to keep us alive. We beg the government to protect our rights. We beg corporations to sell us products that might, just maybe, fill the void inside us. And all the while, we're told this is freedom. This is success. This is the dream. But is it? Or are we just beggars with better marketing? The man pulled out a tattered notebook from his jacket pocket. I write sometimes, he said. Observations. Here's one. The measure of a society's honesty is the distance between its beggars and its billionaires. Both are asking. Both are dependent. But only one admits it. That shook me, because he was right. The billionaire, begging for tax breaks, for subsidies, for laws that protect their wealth, for workers who'll accept less than their worth. The politician begging for votes, for donations, for power. The celebrity begging for relevance, for attention, for one more moment in the spotlight before the world forgets them. All beggars. All asking for something they don't have. All terrified of what happens if the answer is no. But only the person on the street gets judged for it. So why stay here? I asked him, if you see it all so clearly, why sit on this corner? He smiled again. That same knowing smile. Because I'm free in a way you'll never understand until you lose everything. When you have nothing left to beg for, when you've already lost everything they told you defined your worth, that's when you find out who you really are. That's when the begging stops. I visited him several times after that. Each conversation peeled back another layer of the lies we tell ourselves. One day, I asked him, but don't you want more? Don't you want security? Comfort? Want? He repeated, of course I want. I'm human. But here's what I've learned. Wanting and begging are different things. Wanting is natural. It's human desire. It's the engine of life. But begging is what happens when you give someone else the power to determine if your want is legitimate. Think about that distinction. When you want something for yourself on your own terms, that's creation. That's drive. That's authentic. But when you need someone else to approve that want, to validate it, to grant you permission to pursue it, that's when you become a beggar. And our entire society is built on a system that turns wants into begging. Want education? Better beg for admission, for scholarships, for approval from institutions that decide if your dreams are worthy. Want a job? Better beg the hiring manager. Better beg the algorithm that screens your resume. Better beg for the chance to prove you deserve to eat and have shelter. Want love? Better beg the dating apps. Better beg your dates for a second chance. Better beg your partner to stay when things get hard. Want respect? Better beg social media for engagement. Better beg your peers for inclusion. Better beg the world to notice you exist. The man said something else that day that I'll never forget. You know why people are uncomfortable around beggars? It's not pity. It's not even disgust. It's recognition. Deep down, everyone knows they're looking at a version of themselves, just without the mask. And that terrifies them. He was right. When we see someone begging on the street, we're confronted with the fragility of our own position. We're reminded that we're all just a few bad months, a few wrong decisions, a few unfortunate circumstances away from being in that exact spot. But more than that, we're reminded that we're already there. We're already begging. We just do it in boardrooms and break rooms instead of street corners. We're reminded that our dignity, our worth, our value is contingent on things outside our control, on the economy, on our boss's mood, on whether the algorithm favors us today, on whether we're young enough, attractive enough, productive enough to matter. And that's a mirror we'd rather not look into. It was a cold November evening when he told me the real secret, the one that changes everything. You want to know how to stop being a beggar? He asked. Yes, I said, and I meant it. You stop believing that anyone else has something you need to be whole. Silence, that's it? I asked. That's everything, he replied. He explained. See, the game is rigged. They convince you that wholeness is external, that happiness is somewhere else, that you're incomplete and you need their product, their approval, their validation to be okay. Once you believe that, you're a beggar for life. You'll spend forever asking for something that was inside you all along. This is the secret that terrifies the system, because if we all realized we didn't need to beg for permission to exist, to be happy, to be enough, the whole thing would collapse. If we stopped begging for validation on social media, the platforms would lose their power. If we stopped begging for approval from jobs that don't value us, the exploitation would end. If we stopped begging for worth from a society that profits from our insecurity, we'd be free. The beggar's secret isn't about money. It's not about success or failure. It's about recognizing that the moment you give someone else the power to determine your value, you're begging. And the moment you take that power back, you're free. So you're free now? I asked him. He laughed. Freer than I was when I had everything. Back then, I was begging everyone for everything. Now, I ask? Sometimes people give, sometimes they don't. But I'm not begging, because I know that my worth isn't dependent on their answer. That's the distinction. That's the secret. Asking is vulnerable. Asking is human. Asking is connection. But begging is submission. Begging is giving away your power. Begging is believing that someone else's yes or no determines your value. I stopped seeing him a few months ago. The corner where he used to sit is empty now. I don't know where he went, and maybe that's the point, but his words stayed with me. They changed me. I started noticing all the ways I was begging in my own life. Begging my job for validation. Begging social media for affirmation. Begging people to like me instead of just being myself. And slowly, I started to stop. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, hoping for validation. I started creating for myself, not for likes. I stopped explaining myself to people who didn't really want to understand. I started saying no without elaborate justifications. I stopped begging. And you know what happened? Some people left. Some opportunities closed. Some doors that I'd been frantically knocking on stayed shut. And I was okay, because I realized what he'd been trying to tell me all along. When you stop begging, you discover what's actually yours. You discover which relationships are real and which were just transactions. You discover which dreams are authentic and which were just what you thought you were supposed to want. You discover yourself. Here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about judging anyone who's struggling. This isn't about saying we shouldn't help each other or ask for help. We absolutely should. This is about recognizing the difference between authentic vulnerability and the learned helplessness our culture programs into us. This is about seeing the ways we've all been turned into beggars for things that should be basic rights and basic human dignity. And most importantly, this is about taking back your power. Every person you see begging on the street is carrying a story. Maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's bad luck. Maybe it's mental illness. Maybe it's a society that failed them. Probably all of the above. But they're also carrying a mirror. When you see them, you're seeing a version of human existence stripped of all pretense. Someone asking for help without the corporate language, without the networking buzzwords, without the performance of having it all together. And maybe, just maybe, they're more honest than the rest of us. Because at least they're asking for what they actually need, instead of begging for things that will never fill the void. At least they know they're begging. Most of us don't even realize we are. So here's my question for you. What are you begging for? What external validation have you convinced yourself you need to be whole? Whose approval are you waiting for before you allow yourself to be happy? And the bigger question, what would your life look like if you stopped? The beggar's secret isn't that they have nothing. It's that they've discovered what happens after you lose everything the world told you defined your worth. And sometimes, on the other side of that loss is a freedom the rest of us are too afraid to find. If this story made you think differently, if it challenged something you believed, if it made you uncomfortable in a necessary way, do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what are you begging for in your life? What would change if you stopped? Let's have that conversation. Let's be honest with each other, because the first step to stopping the begging is admitting we're all doing it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, you've always been whole. You just forgot. Stop begging for permission to remember.